Good evening, Jennifer Hynes. And I
Hello,
am Sandy
Sandy.
Schoelles, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House, everyone. We have a really packed show for you guys tonight. A packed show. And we are welcoming you. Let's see the chat. Say hi. Oh boy, we got a lot of people in the chat. This is great.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
we've got,
fabulous.
and I've got dogs barking in my house because I have visitors. My cougar life is here. That's Susan, and Hunter is here. Hi, darling Hunter, and Kim. Hunter and Kim are our moderators. Thank you. And Kate is here, and Scott Andrews, K. Ryan, Void is here. Oh boy, truly aghast. My favorite name on the planet.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
And Anthony
Oh,
Davis. And hi, Raza. And Human is here. Yay. Okay, Human is here. I would like to give Human. Yay. Human's here. And okay, I think we're ready to go. Trish Kaiser's here. Dawn O'Leary is here. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all for coming. Let's get started. Jennifer, why don't you take it away and tell them what they have in store? Because we don't
all
have a video
right.
tonight. We have a lot of stuff to go over tonight.
No, we don't have time for a video. Tonight, we're getting nerdy and going back to school. This is kind of like focus on the Arctic in a variety of different ways. So first one we
Yeah.
have up tonight is from Scientific American called Wildfires Transforming Alaska and Amplifying Climate Change, although conflagrations in
Oh,
lower
the
latitude.
conflagrations. Don't
Oh,
worry.
thank you.
We're
Thank
always
you.
like
Get
this.
more attention. Wildfires across the high north are affecting the planet even more. So, about wildfires in the north, not a good combination. Fire and ice
No,
doesn't sound
no,
good.
no,
Then our
no.
next one is from phys.org. Scientists discover large rift in the Arctic's last bastion of thick sea ice. This is from the American Geophysical Union. Not good news for the Arctic. Nobody listening to this show is surprised by this
Surprise.
fact.
Nobody's surprised by
Yeah.
that.
And then we're going to do a deep dive into Zach Labe, some tweets of his, and cover some of his latest graphs about the
Okay.
Arctic, which are truly stunning. Climate Home News, COP26 must urgently get specific on carbon removal in net zero pathways. So that's going to be a pretty interesting article. It also says the
Yep.
last IPCC report overlooked the technical, financial, political limitations of carbon removal techniques and risks informing poor policy choices. So,
Oh boy.
you know, more fun than a barrel of monkeys there, right? Then we have a
Oh
tweet
yeah.
from Go Green.
Barrel of monkeys.
We have Eco Warriors, Go Green, and Sandy is going to tell us some high points, salient points from that
Yeah.
one.
Twitter was my thing today.
I can tell, yeah. And then we're going to dive into Arctic Today. Norway will keep exploring for oil and gas. New center-left government says the news comes even as EU related released a strategy calling for an end to Arctic fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And then we're going to end up tonight with Umair Haig, his latest work, If Everything Sucks,
Hopefully.
Where's the Revolution?
Yeah.
How we got conditioned into accepting dystopia.
There you
And
go.
that
Woo, what a
is a
show.
pretty big show we're having tonight, Sandy.
Yeah, we are. And we're going to start it out with something a little doomy. I've been playing today.
Ooh.
Ooh. All right.
Ooh.
So let's get to the
Scared.
first one because it really goes with the thunder, you know. I mean, look at the fire there. Oh, that's what they need there to put that out, right?
Oh, this is scary. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
well,
should
Halloween's
make
coming,
sound effects
Jennifer.
every so often during the article. That would be cool.
Well, how about
Just to
I
spice it up.
right? I could start this one. And
Yes,
then
please.
we're not going to do this whole one because we really want to spend some time on the second one, which is the Arctic.
Right.
That's important. And we
It
love
is.
talking about that. So,
Yes.
all right. So, everybody get ready. Get ready. Here we go. Scientific American. And this was from what? It was from like October 1st. Okay. So this one, although the conflagrations in lower latitudes get more attention, wildfires across the high north are affecting the planet even more. So, in lightning from an unusually early spring thunderstorm ignited a blaze deep inside the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge in south central Alaska. And the high temperatures at the end of May had reversed a wet spring and quickly dried out the forest floor. So those resulting Swan Lake fires, they were what is it? More than 99,000 acres burned, and they had
Mm,
400 people doing the flames. So there was a lot down.
mm,
Fire, it was
mm.
pretty messed up, and you don't hear a lot of this. Nobody on CNN or Fox or MSNBC, whatever it is, MSDNC, MSNBC, is talking about the Arctic like we do. They just don't. And these articles get buried. They get buried. So up there, the winter snow and cold offered a reprieve, but in 2020 in January, and do you remember hearing any of this? A crew grooming snow
No,
machine
I don't.
trails reported smoke. So there was smoke. They talked about it as the zombie fires. But they
Ah,
reanimated, you see, and they were flaring up. And of course, climate change makes Alaska fire season hotter and longer. It just does. So from 2005 to 2017, fire managers in Alaska and in Canada's Northwest Territories reported 48 of them. All right. So let's get down, and we're going to talk about how it went on to the fires in Siberia in March 2020 and 2021. Look at that picture. How the guy's walking on
mm,
the he's see how the sinkholes can form after fire
mm,
consumes the
mm,
insulating surface layer, exposing permafrost and
mm.
ice wedges that thaw and slump. Oh, it's a mess. It's a
It's a
mess up.
mess.
It is a mess, and it's a
It's
sad mess.
permamesh. It's
Permamush,
become
I know.
permamesh.
I know, that's what you call it. Well, these zombie fires, they can recur because in those northern ecosystems, the trees are not the only or even the main fuel. That thick organic blanket of live and dead plant material covers the surface in the treeless tundra and the boreal forest just to the south. So this dense, the peaty layer called duff, and we're not talking about being in the duff, it is duff, and it can range in thickness from 3 to 20 inches. Okay, if I was in a duff, I would be in the thicker part. And it can accumulate for centuries, becoming increasingly compacted and dense with time. So this surface, it's a green veneer, and it's made mostly of like feather moss. They don't have roots.
Oh,
Or a vascular system, right? But instead, they draw their moisture directly from the air. So the moisture content varies almost instantaneously with relative humidity, even after the rain. Okay. So the moss, it can dry enough within hours to burn. So the longer, hotter, drier summers and shorter winters that climate change is bringing to the northern high latitudes are turning wide tracts of forest floor and the trees into the tinder boxes that lightning or careless people can readily ignite. So we already know that these are coming. They are increasing in frequency and size, right, Jen? They are
oh
increasing.
my God, they
Um,
are.
yes, and it is keeping the duff. It's a remarkable insulator, but it's been keeping a lot of the subsurface Alaska frozen since the Pleistocene epoch. But each it's pretty interesting stuff, huh? Maybe we should do a show just on this interesting material, this duff, and because each it says each half inch of thickness keeps the underlying permafrost, the ground that remains below freezing for 2 or more years, right, about 1 degree Fahrenheit cooler. And Jennifer, you must know. I mean, you've studied the permamush long enough.
Oh, yeah.
It says even if it burns off, the underlying permafrost thaws, turning parts of Alaska into softening, slumping ground. And trees that are rooted in this thawing ground can tilt at all angles, like a haphazard leaning tower of Pisa. So
They call
basically,
it drunken forest, Sandy.
yeah, there you go. Drunken forests. You had said that
Hmm.
once before. That's
Yeah.
right. Well, this article goes on and it talks about the ground thawing, ice in the lower layers, and how this is a feedback loop, because it keeps going down and around. The feedbacks may even convert the entire region from one that absorbs more carbon than it emits to one that emits more carbon. Boy, Jennifer, that really big
Exactly.
time blows and
I mean,
sucks.
it's so sad that
Let's see if I
seeing
can
all
get this
these
bigger.
carbon sinks turning into
Mm.
sources of carbon. It is
Yeah, it
so
is.
scary because the swaths of land are so unimaginably big. I mean, you guys know just in Canada alone how huge Canada is. Look at all that permafrost up there,
Oh
up in the
my.
Canadian
Yeah.
archipelago, over in Siberia, in the
Yeah.
Lena River Delta, in the Yamal Peninsula.
All those
Throughout
beautiful
all of that,
places.
it's permafrost and it's unimaginably big. And that's why this particular feedback loop scares the shit out of everybody who understands it.
Yeah, it is. And it's not like, we stop burning fossil fuels tomorrow and that's just going to change back. But again,
Hmm.
I'm trying not to be negative. I'm trying not to be. It's, something that's
Okay.
very hard, but I am trying to present this as an objective news article. They said, well, people tend to think of Alaska as snowing and not unlikely to burn. Okay, well, I wish I had a bullshit button, but I don't. So it talks about the slow melting, and it talks about the boreal forests, that they are the Earth's largest biome, and they keep going back to how that duff surface can become desert dry within a week or two of warm weather. And it's been warm all over. I mean, it was 77 here yesterday. It's in the 70s in Western New York in freaking mid-October to the end of October. And this is, it's a trend. So let's see if we could look at this one. The hotter summers. It says climate change. This is the conditions that magnify, right? Climate change is amplifying wildfire. Higher temperatures, particularly at night, are drying vegetation and the forest floor, enhancing flammability.
Mhm.
The warmer weather is also shortening the weeks of snow cover, allowing dry conditions to persist for more of that year. So together, these are lengthening the fire season, increasing the acres burned, and similar patterns are occurring globally across the high north. I guess that includes Siberia, right, Jen?
It
So if
certainly
you look at
does.
this, you can see 1930, 1940, 1950. You can see the temperatures. You can see the nights, how they got warmer. You can see where it shows you the snow, the shorter snow seasons. Let me move us because I think we're kind of in the way a little bit. I can move us. And then the when it shows when the first snow, the last snow, um,
Yeah,
and
it's
then the
it's just
acreage.
amazing.
Look at
I
that.
mean, that's the thing about climate change. You don't ever want to cherry pick just like a decade and try and make your point, as some Republicans did, for a while, the famous one oh, there's been no warming since 1998. There was a 12-year sort of leveling period due to the El
Yeah.
Nino, right?
I need.
And it
Yep.
was a particularly strong El Nino. So after that, it sort of flattened out. But it's the trend. It's the trend over time. And if you keep in mind, this Earth and its geological time, its phases that it's gone through,
Mm-hmm.
it's 5 great extinctions that it's gone through thus far, and the one that we're in right now, the slope and the trend of this 6th great extinction, it's like a blink of an eye. It's like Augenblick. It's like you can't believe how fast it is from a geological perspective. From a human lifetime perspective, you
It's
have to use your
nothing.
imagination a little more.
It's a blink.
But
It's a
this thing is
blink.
really happening fast,
It's happening.
especially like these
Um,
last the 10 greatest years there that are outlined in black. They're all
okay,
like
let me get that
since
back in.
1978.
There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. More acres burned annually. Holy crapski. I'm corny
Holy
tonight.
crap
Holy
ski.
crap. Well, I want to say holy fuck, but I was trying to be nice about it. But it is a holy
Okay.
fuck moment. Think about it. This is
Awesome.
like, oh my God. It's happening in the blink of an eye.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
oh. Okay, so we're gonna go down because this next article after this one, but you guys get the drift on this one. It will be in the show notes. I didn't even do that, but this is Arctic amplification. It's an Arctic amplification, and it's driven for the most part by the disappearing sea and land ice, which leave the larger areas of darker ocean and ground cover that absorb much more sunlight than ice and snow. So this is a very long article, and
It is.
I want you guys to go and read it. The whole thing, because we want to move on. But this article highlights permafrost and lightning. I mean, it's a really good one, and talks about the extreme example of fire-induced thawing. And shows more pictures. Like, look at that. The black spruce conifers dominate Alaska's forests, but if they burn deeply, hardwoods such as birch, aspen, and poplar may move in, changing the habitat, changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's survey teams, and they went in, and so this is good, guys. I'm not, again, it's too long because we have a lot of stuff to cover, but
True.
I do want you. Oops, what did I do here? I do want you guys to I can't get us back. I do want you guys to check that one out. So this article is Jennifer's. She's going to
Mm-hmm.
take this one, the scientists discovering the large rift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This just came out in phys.org. Scientists discover large rift in Arctic's last bastion of thick sea ice. We were
Uh-huh.
talking a little bit about this 2 weeks ago.
I actually have this
So there
picture.
is a big bunch of thick ice right above Greenland and Ellesmere Island, which is the top of the Canadian archipelago right next to Greenland. And typically the ice there is the thickest in the entire Arctic. A lot of it has to do with circulation and how it crams up in there, as we were talking about the cyclones in the Arctic and so forth. But lately, there have been polynyas that have been opening, and these are vast swaths of water, open water within the sea ice itself. And you can see it's these polynyas that have gotten opened right up
Yeah, look at
against
them.
Ellesmere Island. They're
Ugh,
huge. They're bigger than expected.
look at that
So,
one. Oh my God, up in the
ooh,
top. Jeez.
it's
Moving us
incredible.
around.
It's just incredible. Yes, get us
Yeah.
out of the Polinia.
Let's get out of
Ah,
the Polinia, Jennifer. I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'm
yeah,
so
I'm really
scared.
scared
I'm
tonight because you
scared.
have your new sound effects.
Oh, I just had fun today.
All right. All
Spruce up the
right.
show.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
spruce it up, baby.
Spruce it up.
Okay.
Spruce it up.
A new study documents the formation of a 3,000 square kilometer rift in the oldest and thickest Arctic ice. The area of open water called a polynya is the first to be identified in an area north of Ellesmere Island, Canada's northernmost island, and is another sign of the rapid changes taking place in the Arctic,
Mm,
according to
mm, mm.
researchers. In May 2020, a hole a little smaller than the state of Rhode Island opened up for 2 weeks in the last ice area, a million square kilometer patch of sea ice north of Greenland and Ellesmere Island. That's expected to be the last refuge of ice in a rapidly warming Arctic. The Polinia is the first one that has been identified in this part of the last ice area, according to a new study detailing the finding in the AGU Journal of Geophysical Research Letters, which publishes high impact short format reports with immediate implications spanning all Earth and space sciences. The formation of the Polinia was unusual because of its location off the coast of Ellesmere Island, where the ice is up to 5 meters thick.
Mm,
Think about that. That's like
mhm.
16 feet of, right? It's about 16 feet of sea
Yep,
ice.
a lot of
That's
sea
the
ice.
last thick ice in the Arctic,
Oh
all
my
bunched
God,
up
look at
there.
that. Yeah.
Quote, nobody had seen a Polinia in this area before. North of Ellesmere Island, it's hard to move the ice around or melt it just because it's thick and there's quite a bit of it. So we generally haven't seen Polinias form in that region before. Kent
Wow.
Moore, an Arctic researcher at the University of Toronto, who was lead author on the study. The surprise Polinia formed during extreme wind conditions in a lingering anticyclone, right? We were talking about this crazy weather that's been up there. This is an
Mm-hmm.
anticyclone, a high pressure storm with high winds that rotates clockwise. You know how cyclones in the northern hemisphere generally go counterclockwise? Well, this one at the very top of the world was clockwise. And that's what benched all this ice up because it was slamming it against Ellesmere Island
Oh
and northern
boy.
Greenland. Yeah. So he combed through decades of sea ice imagery and atmospheric data and found that Polinias formed there at least twice before under similar conditions in 2004 and 1990 and 1988. So 2004,
Mm-hmm.
1988, but no one had noticed. So this guy went through all the photographs, satellite imagery, and found Polinias in those 2 years back there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Polinia.
Ex-
Polinia.
Extreme wind conditions created the gap by pushing sea ice aside, which is common. David Babb, sea ice researcher at the University of Manitoba. But it's unusual for sea ice as thick as the last ice area to be blown
Mm-hmm.
around. Usually, like it's stuck to the archipelago in a big block, but
Mm-hmm.
not anymore. Not
Oh boy.
anymore.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Especially far from the coast where winds tend to be weaker than near the coast. This
Mm.
new study shows the region may not be as resilient to climate change as previously
Previously
thought.
thought, previously
Right?
expected, and then they have this little thing I've been
Right?
playing to show the Polinias in action. Little two
All
second little
right.
thing. There it is. It's Polinia. Sounds like somebody's name.
Polinia opening. Yeah.
Polinia
The
Schoelles. I'm
formation
changing
of
my
a
name.
polynia in the area is really interesting. It's sort of a crack in the shield of this solid ice cover that typically exists in that area.
Hmm.
So that is happening. So that this is happening is also really, really highlighting how the Arctic is changing.
It is a
With the Arctic ice,
changing.
yeah, with the Arctic ice getting thinner every year, polynias could form more frequently, setting off feedback loops of ice locks. Quote, the thing about thinning ice is that it's easier to move around. As ice gets thinner, it's easier to create these polynyas with less extreme forcing.
So
So there's
interesting.
some evidence that these polynyas may become more common or become larger than they were in the past. And warmer temperatures mean that lost ice, is not as likely to be replaced. This is
No.
like the doing, the gong, like the death
The
gong.
gong. Oh, wait,
it,
do
it
I
really
have
is.
one of
We really
those?
need like
No,
a gong.
I have a drip.
We totally need a big gong.
Okay. Well, next
Crack
time
in
I'll
the
find the
Arctic.
gong.
Okay.
Okay.
Crack in the Arctic armor. Polynyas form primarily through two ways. The ice is either blown out of the region or melts, forming a hole. They tend to form in the same locations year after year, typically near the coast, where the landscape can channel winds along the shore, blowing steadily in the same spot. Polynyas are not necessarily bad for their local ecosystem on short time scales.
Mm-hmm.
Snow covered um, ice doesn't let much light into the water beneath it, limiting how much photosynthesis can occur. And that slows productivity further up the food chain. When
Wow.
the ice parts, the ecosystem perks up. When the sea ice is around, it's kind of like a desert. But when you get an area of open water, suddenly all kinds of activity can occur. Seabirds go there to feed, as do polar bears and seals. They're incredibly productive regions. That food web boost historically filtered up the local Inuit populations who hunted in polynyas.
Wow.
But the short term boost for the local ecosystem does not outweigh the long term and irreversible damage of sea ice loss. There's a
Boy.
transient time where if we start to lose ice, there might be a net gain because it'd be more productive. But over the long term, as ice melts and moves offshore, and species like walruses and seabirds lose access to it, we lose that benefit. And eventually it gets so warm that species cannot survive. So I'd like to point something out,
Jennifer,
Sandy,
that's the
about this
horrible part.
particular polynya in just north of Ellesmere Island, which is the tip of the Canadian archipelago. Do you remember a couple of shows back? We were doing a little feature about the currents moving up from the
Yes.
Atlantic through
Yes.
the Canadian archipelago, like little currents. And it
Yes.
was hot water from the Atlantic that's pushing, pushing, pushing through the
Oh.
Canadian archipelago in between the
Oh.
islands, melting the ice from the underneath and pushing a bunch of hot water into the Arctic. I believe that that action alone, not to mention all the other actions happening, can be extreme enough to melt the polynea and soften the ice up and make it more rotten. So when these
Jeez.
anticyclones, which are freaky enough as it is, come along and push against the north of Ellesmere Island, the north of Greenland, it like can move it because the ice has already been rotten
Oh.
up there from all that action coming up through the Canadian archipelago, that hot water from the Atlantic. So
It's
this is probably assisting the formation of these polynyas. Now, all this
interesting, Jen.
last big thick ice in the Arctic melting, you know, I mean, it just goes along with the trend that we're seeing already and have been seeing for many, many, many years, that the Arctic sea ice volume is declining
Yes.
steadily, if not exponentially, you know.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
If not, if not.
If not.
Well, now we're going to move to Zach Labe. We're going to go to
Woo!
Twitter, guys, and we're
Woo!
going to go to the Twitter sphere. And what I pulled up today, let me make it a little smaller so you can kind of see it better. This was, let's see if I can make it bigger on the actual tweet. I don't know. Twitter's weird. I don't think I can. I'm going to move us because we don't have to look at the news. And you can see, yeah, I don't know if I can make it bigger. Let me try. I have this annoying habit of talking my way through all this shit.
Oh, I do that all
2020.
the time. It's quite engaging, Sandy. Don't worry about a thing. You're doing great.
2020 and 2021 observed the hottest July and September on record over land areas
Mm.
globally. And this was from GIS to EMP, the V4, for July and August and September. If you guys can see this big enough, I'll make it bigger and try to move. Oh, I can't move the damn screen.
Mm.
Up. No, I can't get it. I should have set it up or saved it, but
No, it's
well,
okay.
it won't. All right,
Good
so you
deal.
guys get the drift. You get the drift of it's hot. And actually, I mean,
Yeah.
Zach does a good job, and he's got a good following.
Oh, he certainly does.
Yeah, he
Let's
does.
just look at the movement of that
Okay,
orange line etching
let's look at
itself.
that.
Let's just kind of meditate on that as it goes
Okay.
through its action. Let's stop moving. Just stop moving. Stop. Don't move anymore. Okay. Look at the trend. Look at the trend as it paints itself. And that's what we pay attention to, not all the little peaks and valley. So this is July, August, September global land temperature starting in what's the starting year, Sandy? I can't quite see. Is it 1980 something? 1990
On the
something?
bottom, I can't
Yeah.
see it either. I got to move it up. Sorry, 1900, 1910, 1920, 1930,
Oh,
1940,
okay.
50,
There you
60,
go. So it's
70,
since the
80.
beginning of the century, is it not?
Yep. Yep, it looks
Okay.
like that.
Okay. Yeah, now I know this graph very well. I just had to
Yeah.
kind of set it. So since the beginning of the century, so this is the last 120 years, you can see when we entered into World War II and up until there was it kind of did flatten out for a little while there back in the 60s and the 70s, but then you get into 1980 and we are off to the races.
Yeah.
Look at the
Look at that.
lift that we have gotten in this graph since 1980. It's absolutely freaking stunning.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, it
There
is. I
you
mean, look
go.
at that. Do you see any hesitation in this graph? Do
No.
you see it pulling away? Do you see
No.
anything in the last 40 years going down
No.
in that trend line? I see nothing. Have we really tried to do anything about this? Is it even possible? And I shouldn't mention it. Is it even possible to
Well, we're
work
going
with
to
this
end up
situation
we're going to
of
end up talking
freaking
about it. Yes, we are. We've
uh,
got some good stuff to even move on to now. And we're going to move on. Okay. I guess, Jennifer, what do you think? This is the best segue to go to COP? This
yeah,
article. All right.
absolutely.
Now, this article, we're going to tag team this one because this one
Okay.
is a take it or leave it. Let's see if, I mean, this whole carbon removal thing, it's interesting to say the least, but let's go for this. I'll give it a start. And Jen, then you can bring me up at the rear. The
Okay.
last IPCC report overlooked the technical, financial, and political limitations of carbon removal techniques and risks informing poor policy choices. I really should play the crowd displeasure at this one. The latest IPCC report emphasizes that carbon dioxide removal techniques will play a critical role in stabilizing global temperature. Now, Jennifer, just really
Yeah.
quickly, doesn't Paul talk about that? Paul Beckwith has talked about
Mhm.
carbon capture, carbon removal, and he's on
Oh,
his way to COP. He's going to COP.
well,
He's
not just Paul Beckwith,
yeah,
but
lots of
Peter Wadhams has
yeah,
been
Peter.
very actively working with carbon capture people. I don't think Paul Beckwith has been actively
Not
working
like that.
with scientists or performing carbon capture, but Peter Wadhams devotes most of his time to carbon capture technologies. And it's very challenging when you think about the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the atmosphere. 400x parts per million. It doesn't matter if it's 416 or whatever.
Yeah,
The
four to
point of it
13.
is the
Yeah.
ratio of the amount of carbon dioxide molecules per air is so minuscule, and you have to work so hard to try and capture the carbon dioxide out of that air. But that is one of Peter Wadhams is full. I wouldn't. He continues to try for solutions in
Of
spite of our
course.
predicament, I would say.
He's probably a grandpa.
Probably.
Let's have him on again.
I know. I'll
He's such a
contact him.
sweetheart. All right, why don't you do
I will
that?
contact
We've
him.
got some stuff irons in the fire, guys. All right, so let's get back to this one. Let's see, where was I? Oh, yeah, in the key scenarios, the report it did not make clear exactly how much future CDR would be required. Now, this would be the job of the IPCC Working Group 3 report, currently due in March of 2022, which is okay, too late for this COP26. But in scenarios where we limit warming 1.5 to 2 degrees, large net removals are shown after 2050. But the actual levels of residual emissions and the CDR offsetting them are largely invisible to the reader. The invisibility matters for two reasons. First, the lack of clarity. It conceals the huge technical and financial challenges that would be involved in delivering high level of removals. It allows, in turn, this allows decision makers to continue to believe that they can defer hard decisions for years or decades by assuming enough carbon dioxide removal will be developed to clean up the mess. It allows all sorts of polluters, from coal mines to airlines, to argue that their emissions can continue as they will eventually be offset by CDR. You know what that gets? That definitely gets the flush. Doesn't
Definitely.
that one, yes, that one is definitely,
Definitely.
and the second problem is that the report, it doesn't consider what CDR would mean for social justice. So how and where it is deployed, it matters immensely for how much removal techniques compete for land with food production, or whose renewable energy supplies are going to be diverted to carbon removal. So, another significant problem is with the basic assumption that underpins a lot of thinking about net zero, that 1 ton of carbon in equals 1 ton of carbon out. That's a false equivalence. So, Jen, why don't you take that over? It seems like a good segue for you
Hmm.
to get right in there. That's a false
Yeah.
equivalence.
For
Mm-mm-mm.
example, when removals by biological techniques, which is storing carbon in forests, soils, peat bogs, or seagrass meadows, are used to offset emissions from fossil fuels, there is a multiple mismatch of timescales. It takes years, even decades, for these biological techniques to start removing and storing carbon in meaningful quantities. And in the face of already existing climate disruption, like fires, floods, these offsetting techniques are becoming increasingly unreliable, risking the release of captured carbon more quickly than from geological carbon stores. Check that out.
Yeah, check
That
that
would
out.
be like you're trying to do one thing and it does the exact opposite. It's like a freaking boomerang, right? I
That's it.
know.
Yeah.
It is. It's like a
And
boomerang. You
that's
think
not
you're
funny.
doing
It's
something and it
pathetic.
comes back and it hits you in the face and cuts your head off. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's
There you
ridiculous.
go.
It's horrible. It's scary. Uh,
Wow.
these concerns strike at the very heart of the IPCC methodology. The focus on cumulative net emissions and the deployment of carbon budget in which each unit of carbon is additional and exchangeable for any other unit of the same size. I've
Mm.
never liked those carbon pricing things. Effective climate policy crucially depends on the differences between units of carbon. Which emission can we cut with the least economic damage? Which form of carbon removal have the most co-benefits for biodiversity or health?
That's more
Of
important
course,
than economic damage.
yeah,
I'm sick of it already. Let's think
yeah,
of biodiversity and health for
yeah,
fucking once.
no kidding. Of course, such questions might well be seen to fall in the remit of upcoming reports of working groups 2 and 3 at the IPCC. But with the working group, one, insistence on carbon equivalence and failure to properly address concerns about scalability, the
Yeah.
IPCC could be creating fertile ground in which misunderstandings about CDR might take root, risking poor policy choices down the line. I mean, this is so fucked up, Sandy. Really, so fucked up.
I'm sorry,
In the
guys. We
worst
try.
scenario, it is, man. I mean, you're trying to do
Mhm.
something and you throw a boomerang in the air, but you don't know it's a boomerang. You think it's a baseball. It's not a baseball, it's a boomerang. You don't understand what you're throwing, you know?
God, I wish I had
In
a
the
boomerang
worst
sound effect. I need a boomerang. Oh,
In the worst
shit.
case scenario, the report gives cover to bad actors seeking to deliberately muddy the
Oh.
discussion on the scale and speed of emissions reductions
Oh.
required for a Paris aligned
Like
world. A
that.
Paris aligned
Ooh.
world. Don't you love it?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Optimum policy measures look very different if carbon units have complex and multiple characters than if they are all fungible with one another. And promises of future carbon removal might deter or defer otherwise practical emission reductions. Both factors speak against carbon trading and offset markets in favor of
Hmm.
regulation, mandates,
Hmm.
and targeted specific support for selected forms of emission cuts and carbon removal techniques. When our future depends on sustainable removal, capacity to repair the climate, the question of how much removals are needed to offset residual emissions becomes intensely political. No fucking shit. But the IPCC's Working Group 1 report, vital in its contents and timing ahead of the Glasgow COP, doesn't ask this all important question.
Oh,
Another
it
instance
doesn't.
of oops, either oops, I
Oops.
forgot something,
Oops.
or oops, I
It's
don't understand what the
oops.
fuck I'm doing
I did
something.
it
I don't,
again.
I think it's the latter. I really think it's the latter.
Okay.
Sorry. I
We'll
do.
have the latter oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
You need a totally complex 4-dimensional mind to
Oh my
grasp this
God.
shit. When
Yeah, really.
policymakers meet at COP26 in November, they must not make the same mistake. They should establish targets for emissions reduction and carbon removal, and critically, make sure that emissions are ultimately eliminated at the source. Amen. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Hi, Torstein. He joined. Amen. Amen. I don't have an
Amen.
amen, but I do have this. Okay. We're gonna give that, if we don't have a lot of hot air at
Oh
COP26, I'll be
my
surprised.
God.
Well, what do you think? I think we're gonna have a lot of
Oh
hot air
my
flying around for a
God.
while. And I'm not negative in saying, oh, COP26 is, a horrible thing. It's just it's COP26. And we're worse than we've been. And it's
I
just
know.
frustrating. And I really don't want to be this way because I want kids to see that there's something for them to fight for. And
I
I
do
hope
too.
that this goddamn meeting will give them at least that feeling that they can keep going on with the indigenous people in DC today marching, getting arrested. And then one girl, she bit a cop, which was really stupid because that's all that's going to happen is now they're going to focus on this one dysfunctional person who probably had mental health problems, bit a cop, and of course that's going to tar and feather the whole movement. Now
Oh,
everybody's going to
Jesus.
say, oh, we hate indigenous people and why are they protesting and screw them and they're worse than Black Lives Matter. It's going to be another clusterfuck
Oh,
because it was already on
Jesus.
Twitter. I saw it. It was horrible. But these people are
Oh,
doing wonderful things. Our Native Americans in the United States are the climate activists du jour. They're like the only ones that get things done. They're the ones that helped us beat the Northern Access Pipeline. I love the Senecas. Thank you, if any Senecas are listening. So, as Greta said, blah, 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 blah. That is like one of Greta's most famous ever.
I love it. I love it. Blah, 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 blah. She was very
Oh,
good on that.
Veg said that he's got that carbon tax in Canada, but it really just goes into the general revenue. So, economically, I guess the jury's out on that one. It
Yeah.
is. But that's what is it, Citizens Climate Lobby pushes for because they say, well, industry, has to be involved and industry's only going to be involved if it's economic, that's how it goes. All right, well, we're going to move on, guys, because we've got a Twitter feed that I particularly like, and this is Go Green Eco Warrior. Not you, Raza Eco Warrior. It's Go Green Eco Warrior. And this particular, wow, I've got 9 notifications and I didn't even put the show up on Twitter. I forgot. He says, and let me see, can you see it? All right. Important to understand. Climate change is speeding up rapidly. It took us over 200 years to reach 1.2 C in a world above pre-industrial levels, and that is already causing devastation across the earth. It may take just 15 years to reach a 2C world if mega action is not taken now. Okay? So, this video, let's see if we can hear
Jesus.
it.
Look at that iceberg overturning as it calves off of the glacier. Holy crap. The power, the majesty of that. It's like 6 times the Empire State Building or something. These are things of an unimaginable scale. When you see them sped up, you can finally understand the magnitude of our climate breakdown that is happening right before our eyes.
Very eyes. At least right
Before
before
our
our
eyes.
very
It is
eyes on Environmental Coffee House.
gobsmacking. It is awe-inspiring. It is humbling, and it is fucking terrifying.
Yeah. It's yep, there you go. So that's Go Green, and then he's got I really like his little tweets. He's pretty. I like Christine Mattis is on here. We have this little group, and climate tipping points already tipping. Greenland ice sheet has passed point of no return. Wildfires are releasing more carbon. This year, Siberian fires emitted far more greenhouse gas. Well, I can't. 953. Void or whoever. MTCO2E. Okay, it's how much the gas. It's a measurement that I don't understand actually, but somebody in our chat will. Then Germany releases in a year, and the Amazon releasing more carbon than it can absorb. And guess what? What does he get? 6 comments. 6 comments on this, right? And he's making them. So what he's doing is he's saying, look, the climate tipping points are already tipping, and he's showing you the Amazon rainforest is now releasing. He's doing what we do, but in Twitter. The Amazon rainforest is now releasing more carbon. Then it goes down. Of course, I'm commenting always. Well, I sent you And then he says climate change. It could be a female. I don't even know. Data shows soaring carbon footprint released by wildfires. Climate change is increasing fire conditions. Just what we talked about, right? Just what we talked about.
Yeah.
And let's see a couple. Oh, let's see. Sandra says the earth is turning into hell. It is literally turning into a lake of fire of our own doing. And I didn't even pull up the
So
volcano, and
true.
that's not our own doing. So we've got, I really like this one
Yeah.
because this guy gives me ideas, and I like his tweets, and he follows me. But I do have, Jennifer, I have a graphic
Mhm.
that we're going to talk about. Remember that graphic I
Mhm.
want to talk about? Um,
Mhm.
I'm going to pull it up. I have it here. Is it this one? Nope, that's not it. Just one
No?
second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Here it is. Oh gosh. Can you guys see this this one? This one is, I'm gonna move it around. Um this one is the I gotta move this. $1 billion weather disasters, January to September 2021. Okay. And it shows you number one was Hurricane Ida, and that was in Louisiana. But it goes down and how much they cost, and
Right.
it is an economics thing because obviously
Right.
the continued clusterfuck we're in is just going to it is going to cost a lot of money. And I don't even think it's the damage. It's not even remediating the damage. So there's drought, severe weather, Europe, China, nobody's left. This shows you Europe, China,
Yeah.
US, Europe, US plains, Brazil, India, Canada, Australia, Mexico, Japan, Spain. And we've watched a lot of these things because as our year went, didn't we look at a lot of videos from a lot of these horrendous things that are happening? So it goes all
Absolutely.
the way. So this one, I'll try to put the
Seriously.
link in. It's
This is just 1 year, guys. Is this 2021 or 2020? 2021?
It was no, this is 20 yeah, I think so. No, wait.
Yeah, up to
Yeah,
current. It's at the
2021.
top.
Yeah, up to
Look
September.
at this. This is all from 2021. Look at this thing, and it's across the globe. That's why climate change is really the predicament of our species entirely. Like our entire cycle of evolution as a species and our
Uh-huh.
consciousness evolution as a species has come up this point because this is hitting the entire world at once. And it's something to grasp, right? It's really something to try to take on board and understand the magnitude of this issue.
Huge magnitude. And there's people that
Yeah.
just have no clue. And I do my best to try. I really do my
Mhm.
best. And thank you, Hunter, sweetheart. Well, we're going to move on to something that's probably going to piss you off even worse than you're pissed off already because tonight is a theme. And the theme now includes Norway. And
Yeah.
Norway, we'll tag team this one also. And I think
Yeah.
Torstein's here, and he was from Norway before Greenland. They are going to keep exploring. They're going to keep exploring for oil and gas. New center left government says. Look at that. That's how they do it. That's why they can have green economy for themselves because they drill the shit out of everything else. So they're going to continue to explore for
Wow.
oil and gas in the next 4 years, with most new drilling permits to come in mature areas of the sea. The incoming center left government said on Wednesday. Well, they don't want to lose their, what is that? What they call it? Their, windfall. Uh, a majority coalition of the Labor Party and Rural Center Party will take over power on Thursday after defeating the conservative led government. And Torstein, if you have anything to pipe in, be free. And Jackie asked, "Did we really expect them to drop the drilling?" No, not really. Their petroleum industry will be developed, not dismantled, the two parties said in a joint policy document, adding that it will maintain the existing system of handing out the exploration licenses. So while climate change was a major issue debated during the campaign for parliament, Labor has said it wants to ensure any transition away from oil and gas and the jobs it creates towards green energy is a gradual one. So that's like the same as what they call in the United States incrementalism, which is like a turtle. It's a snail.
Mm.
Incrementalism is a snail. So, Jennifer, why don't you take it
Mm.
away, babe? Norway.
Yeah, Norway is Western Europe's largest oil and gas producer, pumping around 4 million barrels of oil equivalent per day and deriving half its export revenues from hydrocarbons so far this year. The oil industry welcomed the new government's plans. Quote, giving access to attractive acreage is the most important measure. Authorities have to ensure continued development and
Jesus.
value creation from oil and gas, but also to finance a green transition, said Norwegian Oil and Gas Lobby Group.
Yeah.
Complicating the situation, the new minority government must seek support from opposition parties in parliament for its policies. However, some of which seek to curtail the oil industry's drilling.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, we are about to get a new government, but with the same fossil and irresponsible policies as the previous one, Frode Plum, the head of Greenpeace Norway, told Reuters.
Mm.
Quote, the government platform means full steam ahead on continued oil exploration,
Yep.
end quote.
There they go.
Yeah. Full speed ahead, guys. No problem here. The
Bye,
agreement of the
Katie.
European Economic Area, allowing Norway to be part of the EU single market
Hi,
without
honey.
being a member of the European Union, will remain in place, said Jonas Gahr Store, who will
Mm-hmm.
become prime minister in the new government. Quote, the EEA agreement is the basis of our relationship with Europe, Store told reporters. But Oslo will discuss more often specific cases of EU rules and legislation for implementation, according to Store's coalition partner, Trivslasva Veldum. We do not want this privatization of railways that the previous government has done, Vedum told reporters. We will see the concrete cases as they come.
So there you go, folks. Norway is going to continue until they don't, because they've got to fund their transition, and
Full
somehow,
steam,
and that's going to happen everywhere
full
else
steam
too.
ahead.
It's not going
Full
to
steam
change.
ahead.
Well, I'd like to
Nothing's
hear. I
changed.
can't wait
Full steam
for COP.
ahead.
I honestly can't wait for COP. Okay, the Council of the Parties, for anybody that doesn't know, is in, where is it this year? It's in Scotland?
Glasgow. Glasgow. Yeah,
Okay.
Glasgow.
Well, so now that we've talked about all the things that are happening that contribute to our bad feelings and just all this thunderous horrible feeling, we're going to move on to Umair Hake. We're going to go a little overtime, guys. We've got something called da 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 da, if everything sucks, where's the revolution? And I wonder, do we need music accompanying this one? Because I certainly have.
Totally,
I
totally.
have it. I have it. Okay, we're going to do this. All right, but I got to make it lower because it's dystopian. All right, no future. So here's a tiny question. Why is it that the future of the human race, the planet, democracy itself is on the line now? And there's not a revolution anywhere in sight. Take a glimpse at the headlines. Today they were so dystopian, I even held my head in pain. A brief smattering. Trump's back in action, Biden's sinking in the polls, the Democrats can't get a thing done, China's building more coal plants, Brits, thanks to the colossal stupidity of Brexit, still can't get gas, food, milk, medicine, but nobody's supposed to talk about much of it. Billionaires get trillions richer, and the millions are dead of a preventable plague. Should I go on? Well, what do you think, Jen? Yes, I'm going on. We are hammered, you and I, with dystopia. It rains down on us daily like a deluge. Fascism and climate change, bounty hunters chasing women in Texas, the Taliban back in power. Nature is being annihilated. The seasons changing. They are changing into things we don't have words for. Whole regions of the globe becoming fire and flood and plague belts. You'd think, given all that people would be fed up, right? Fed up. That they'd be clamoring for transformation, not just change, whatever that even means, but profound, deep-lasting transformation to institutions, constitutions, norms, values, those things we thoughtlessly call lifestyles. And you'd think, given the sheer scale of dystopia thundering down on us, that it would be the age of revolution. But it's not. It's not. Instead, if it's an age of indifference, of apathy, of resignation, fatalism, futility. It's an age of paralysis, an age of pacification instead of pacification instead of revolution. Something, Jennifer, is very wrong with that. It's not remotely normal. When people are pushed to the brink like we are, and I mean everything from countries to generations, normally they push back. But we don't. Throughout history, peasants have revolted when pushed too far. Remember, pitchforks, right? We all have our pitchforks ready. France, Russia, Britain, ages of revolutions have been a constant theme throughout history. So why aren't we pushing back? Why are we just accepting dystopia fatalistically instead of revolting against it? And sorry, I don't just mean voting for Joe Biden. I mean actually revolting for better structures, for systems and institutions and values and norms. I mean disobeying the corrupt, corroded systems and structures which have failed us, ripping them down and building better, fairer, truer ones. I mean really pushing back. Here we are at humanity's most crucial juncture. The planet is dying. Our politics, polities, are being nice, are melting down. Our societies don't function anymore, and there are no revolutions, not even a hint or trace of one. The next decade or two is going to decide the fate for us for centuries, probably millennia. We will have a planet to live on, societies to belong to, or will we just plunge into a new dark age? You want to take it over, Jen?
We are going down without a fight. And yet, we live on one of history's most critical moments. That is profoundly, deeply weird. It says that somehow something broke us. Right down the middle, the spirit, the will to live, endure, grow. What is that something? First, let me put a name to this weird phenomena of living in one of history's most dystopian moment yet. were going down without a fight. Not a revolution anywhere in sight. Let's call it the Great Paralysis.
Yeah.
Something's numbed us, paralyzed us, pacified us.
Yes.
As Kelseyite might call it, manufactured consent. But I'd go further than that. Let me explain. I think what's paralyzed us is the brutal combination of technology and capital. Let me focus for a minute on young people. The last time the world went dystopian, young people responded fiercely. I'm thinking of the hippies of the 60s, the love children. Their intense focus on love and peace was a direct consequence of growing up in the ashes of World War.
Yep.
Today, they're derided. Hippie is an insult, but it shouldn't be. Because young people back then believed in truly noble and earth-shaking goals, like, yes, world peace, and an end to war and violence, and equality for all peoples and nations. Did they make it happen? The answer isn't often given that they didn't, but that answer is wrong. The peace movement of the 60s had a massive impact. They were responsible, if not solely, then at least pretty critically, for everything from the passage of everything from civil rights, what would become in the 1980s the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Those flower children grew up, at least some of them, and really did begin to end war, violence, hunger, and poverty. It's a foolish myth to imagine the massive growth in consciousness, which happens to be in the 60s, resulted in nothing. That all those hippies just grew up and became boomers. They didn't. Many of them went on to do genuinely beautiful and world-changing things, whether at the United Nations or as civil rights advocates or as gay rights lawyers and so forth. Now, let's think about young people today. They have no goals whatsoever. I don't mean personal goals. I mean generational ones. In the same way that we could have said that young people in the 60s believed, not all of them, just at the average, in the end of violence, war, hunger, and so forth. Today, we can't say that about we can't say young people believe in or aspire to anything as a generation. Sure, Greta and Malala are trying to get them to, but by and large, you don't see young people on the street every day shouting that they still need a planet to live on, or societies that work, or just lives that don't end in dystopian ruin. Yes, it happens once in a while, but it's not a generational feeling, norm, rule, sentiment. We don't think of Zoomers and millennials as revolutionaries, but just the opposite, as poor kids who are caught up like deer in the headlights of an approaching freight train, except this is the express train to global collapse. So why aren't young people? Yeah, go ahead.
All right, because this is a good one for both of us we're getting into it. So why aren't young people just more revolutionary? Again, that's not some kind of, kind of kids today, Jermond. It's a fact. The fascists protest more and harder than the youth, whether it's anti-vaxxers or the January 6ers. That's kind of gross, isn't it, Jennifer? That reason, yes. I think, is technology. Let's take example of young women. What are they doing if they're not out there making a revolution happen? They're glued to Instagram. The statistics are horrific. Teens spend so much time on the average, like 9 hours a day, right? 9 hours a day staring at screens, three of them on social media. The average TikTok user spends 1.5 hours on the app. And what does Instagram do? It makes young women objectify themselves. So their goal in life is to, sometimes look like weird alien baby strippers, sexualized objects made of filler and pout and plastic surgery. That is the only way to win the popularity game because it's with the algorithm. An algorithm controlled and reinforced by men twice, 3, 4 times their age rewards. The algorithm tells them what to eat, wear, say, think. They react obediently because, well, you can't fight an algorithm. So the result is a generation of young women. They're being traumatized by pedophilic, algorithmic male gaze. Of course, they're not out there revolting. They're too busy being rewarded for sexualizing themselves and being punished when they don't, with eating disorders and self-hate and loneliness and worthlessness. So what is tech teaching young women? That their real role models are influencers whose job in life is to look like that? The game is rigged. And they're talking about demon plastic surgery faces. The game is rigged. And it's by men who code it, of course. Young women are supposed to be baby strippers, not Malala and Greta. See the problem there, right? Think of how many young women combined follow all these influencers whose real job, right, is to degrade them into sexualization. Tens, hundreds, and millions. God. Ugh. It's been happening a lot longer than this, but social media, Jennifer's just made it so much worse. But now, think of why Malala and Greta can barely rouse a protest at the UN or Congress or whatever. You begin to see the problem. Although I have to differ because that big protest was a couple of weeks ago. We showed it there in Europe anyway. It was huge. Yeah. But way more young women are objectified by tech than are allowed, encouraged, incentivized to care about the world they live in. And I want to make clear, that's not a misogynistic insult, right? It's an observation about how structures of patriarchy and capital control women. The code that teaches young women to do this, it's owned by men, traded on stock markets by men. Patriarchy and capital batter young women with exploitations, just as they always have. It isn't a woman's job to think, and it certainly isn't to rebel. So let's think about young men. Why don't they rebel either? Well, let's take a look at culture today. What passes for its Marvel movies. A few generations ago, you had John Lennon singing about the end of war and violence and hunger forever to hundreds and millions. And they believed in it. You see the difference? Young men today, they exist in a cultural matrix poisoned by the stupidity of greed, of capital. What's a young man told to be? Elon Musk, maybe? Or maybe some dumb Marvel movie hero. Save the world with your super muscles. Young men grow up into a weird, abusive cultural matrix, which it's only getting weirder. The ones that can't make it, that can't fit in, that can't get girls, they don't even become punks or nerds anymore. They become incels. And then incels taunt each other into self-castration or massacring women. It's super, super bad. Go ahead, Jennifer.
The plight of young men is, of course, the mirror image of that of young women. If young women are taught to be submissive, giggling, hypersexualized baby strippers, all vocal fry and filler, then young men are taught to be the muscled, mindless alpha male bros who abuse and exploit them. And if they can't be that, then they're worthless. The average young dude today couldn't tell you what happens at 2, 3, 4 degrees of climate change because, like a young woman, he's glued to a screen. But what do young men do on their screens? Well, if young women are hypersexualizing themselves for an algorithmic male gaze, then young men are addicted to porn, violence, and greed. I know that makes me sound like Joel Orstein or something, but well, think about it. 70% of the men who watch porn are under the age of 24.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's
No,
kind
I
of
didn't
fucking
either. I thought it was older guys
stunning.
too. It's changed.
Jesus fucking
Yeah.
Christ. There's evidence that the age group that's more likely to develop a porn addiction is 13 to 16 years old. But then there's video games. Hey, I like a good video game as much as the next dude. But you can't just play a video game and not know a damn thing about global warming. Then there's the omnipresent Marvel movie. A new one out every month, none of which have any redeeming value in terms of making young men think about the world they actually live in at all, versus promoting the dumb fantasy that real men have superpowers. Tech
Wow.
in this way has pacified an entire generation. They should be out there on the streets revolting. Instead, they're glued to the screen. And what screens do young people were beginning to find out is incredibly depressing. Screen time crushes the soul, breaks the mind, paralyzes the spirit. It pacifies. Instead of sparks, enlightens, illuminates, edifies. That pacification is often traumatic. Young women aren't happily pacified by Instaculture, which teaches them that if they're not baby stripper influencers, all giggle and submission, they're worthless. It makes them depressed. But that pacification too, eradication of the will to revolt. Men's will to revolt, meanwhile, is pacified in a different way. You kill some dumb imaginary alien in a video game. You watch some dumb Marvel hero take on a supervillain. Hey, wow, you feel better for a day or two. You go on to some forum where you can hate women, immigrants, minorities, anyone who's in your way, and you feel better. You're egged on and encouraged by those just like you, trapped in a vicious circle of masturbatory catharsis.
Ooh,
The will
that's
to
heavy.
revolt? Male culture is onanistic at this point, meaning if a young dude and you've got porn, violence, and hate on tap, well, what need is there to revolt? Your will to revolt is going to be eradicated by those forms of masturbation long before it ever reaches a crescendo. I know a lot of you won't like reading above. You'll say, what the hell is this dude about? And yet, the problem remains. This should be an age of revolution.
Goddamn right.
Instead, it's an age of paralysis. People, especially young people, should not be going down without a fight. But they are. And so, something, my friends, needs to explain what broke our spirits, minds, our will to revolt against the systems and structure which are hammering us over the head with dystopia every single day. Why is it that the future of the human race, the planet, democracy, life itself is on the line right now, and there's not a revolution anywhere in sight?
Wow, that was good. He's right. You know,
He's right.
he really
He's
explained a
right.
lot,
God,
and it's
he's so
sad,
smart.
but you know, there still are, look, the indigenous people, our Native Americans are in DC. Maybe they're not as glued to the social media as the normies in the suburbs that really don't even know what the fuck is going on. And it's sad because I blame the parents for letting this happen too. I blame the
Yeah.
media for bringing all this on. I blame capitalism, consumerism, the ever non-ending quest for money, and the sexualization of women has been going on forever. It's just so much worse with the internet, and
Oh,
I know, okay, and it's fucked up, but
yes.
we know that there's still a way to fight. You know, that we know that there are still organizations that people can get into. And how do you reach the kids? Wouldn't it be nice if we could change the curriculums in school instead of all these right wing morons going to school board meetings? Did you hear this week about the Texas school district that they have some kind of thing that says they have to show an opposing view to something? So they were talking about the Holocaust, and that their process says, well, they have to have an opposing view, and the teachers were freaking out. And my thought was, what is the opposing view to the fucking Holocaust? Mein Kampf? Is that what it is? So that's what's going on in our country. That's what's
Ugh,
going on. Opposing
ugh,
view to the Holocaust? That's disgusting. What's the
ugh,
opposing view to slavery? That it was good?
ugh,
So,
ugh.
yeah, okay. We're a little
I mean,
fucked.
he summarizes it so well. Hats off to
Yeah.
Umair Haig for putting into words something that our subconscious has been hinting about, something that has been fermenting and fomenting within our consciousness at a mass consciousness level for years and years,
Well,
and wanting to be born. He brings these ideas into the
yeah.
light. He's a
Not everybody
midwife.
agrees. Jean said she
He's a
thought the article
midwife.
was mean and that he's sexually frustrated. Well, he might be, where he's married, has kids, but I think because he has kids, by virtue of that fact, and because he is a writer and writes a lot and examines the the way it is, he said it his way. And
He did.
I'm sure that there are people that that can write. You know, Jean, you are probably the perfect one to write an article that shows the good sides, the side of where the kids are getting their activism, like a Greta or a all of them in the Sunrise Movement. But it's tiny, it's small, you know. The revolution, yeah, it's on Twitter. They argue. The left argues within itself. It is a conundrum. It's a real conundrum. Let's see. Tony said reality denial in Texas. I just talked to a guy at the library who said to me point blank, Trump did a lot of things for America. And oh, where did it go? And I failed to ask what things. Oh, Tony, that's gross. What did he do for
Ugh.
America? I mean, what did he do? And yes, okay, so Gene has a point. When I was young, parents said VHS tapes were the devil. Yeah, well, that's because that was our age. VHS porn. Oh my God. So truly, I guess, that Gene, are you familiar with the rest of his work? He's always intense. He's an intense writer, but he says it like it is for himself. So,
I think he's brilliant, and he's pointing out a crisis of consciousness. And I actually agreed with every single thing he said in this article. I completely mirror his point here, Sandy.
yeah,
And I
it's
think
okay.
we've got a crisis of consciousness at a mass level. I mean, throughout humanity. I mean, we are at a point of reckoning of consciousness in humanity. Things are speeding up. We see it. We see it in all the graphs. We see it in population. We see it in food. We see it in Brexit. We see it in every single thing around us, right? And I think he just expresses it so well. So it is our noble task
Mm-hmm.
to open our minds and to see as far as we can see and to impart that consciousness of awakened awareness to others. I think that's the
Beautifully
main
said.
point.
Beautifully said, Jennifer. Well, guess what, guys? It's been a show and a half. It's an hour and 25 minutes, and we
Yeah.
have a wonderful bunch of people. And yes, hi, Chuck Diesel. Thank you for being here as always. He is our supporter, and he loves to share us about
Thank you, Chuck.
liking, yeah,
We
liking and
appreciate that.
sharing. Let's see, human. How can one separate themselves from being part of the universe and therefore the same? That's a heavy one, human. And I can't answer it. I can't answer it. Hi, Trish. Trish says love to all. Of course, it's love to
Hi,
all. We love
Trish.
you too. It is. It is. Oh, well, guys, what do you think? Nostradamus and Torstein Hunter, thank you very much. And screen time over, back to the garden. Outside here, Jennifer, when I said, when I got the thunder, it's
Oh,
gloomy out
yeah.
here. It's all foggy outside,
Ooh.
and it's like 97% humidity. And if you look outside of my house, it just it just sounds like that, and we had thunder today just like that,
Oh.
so I got the thunder ones. And all right, guys, anybody else have anything that they want to contribute to our little talk and show here? Okay, Torstein has a vid in about an hour. Go to Going South on YouTube, please, and watch Going South's newest piece. That would be great. And Kim, I'm going to put yours up as the last comment. Everyone, take care and make sure to keep love, light, and peace in your heart. And like the page as you leave. Love, like, and peace in your heart. Thank you, sweetheart. We love you. Peace out, guys. We love you.